products are on the International Space Station. It's actually on the Mars rover Perseverance. It's on Mars right now to keep the electronics and the batteries cool and safe. It's on the International Space Station to keep the batteries safe. So we've done a lot of work with NASA, with US DoD, a lot of space proven and military proven applications. And our mission is actually to bring these applications or this technology to commercial mass market applications like energy storage, electric vehicle, electric aviation, for the battery application and so forth. Most recently, we entered into the robotics and physical AI world by establishing a partnership with a company called German Bionics. So now we're the partner for them to bring their exoskeleton product to North American markets. And I think it's a fantastic product. It's their sixth generation. It's called the Apogee. It's the most powerful exoskeleton product in the world. And we're super excited to bring that product to the United States.
Oh, that's really interesting. But before I ask any Bitcoin questions, I want to ask about that. What are the applications for that? Are they industrial or is that a military application as well?
That's an industrial application. It's broad use. The focus of that device from German Bionics, it's called Apogee, is to alleviate lower back strain. In the U.S., with the aging workforce and lack of physical labor here in the U.S., lower back pain is a very common problem. As a matter of fact, it's probably the number one cause of injury for workforce here in the United States. So it can be in Germany where it's been adopted. It's used at airports like Stuttgart Airport for as you can imagine handle luggage handling. It's used for logistic companies, warehouse. It's used at hospitals, so nurses wear them till they can help patients get up much easier. Um, and so no, the application is actually kind of endless. So we're approaching logistic companies, warehouse, hospitals, construction companies. We are, here in the U.S., we're about 500,000 construction workers short, 4 million homes short. So there's going to be a lot of construction needs, and as you can imagine, construction workers lift very heavy stuff. So and also warehouse and logistics and stuff. There's a lot of repetitive lifting, and so this device really alleviate a lot of strain on the lower back. And it has a lot of sensors built in to give you a lot of data about how you're lifting, and also give you recommendations how you should lift better. Better postures, better utilize of the suit, as well as before and after your work, how to do cool down exercise as well as warm up exercise before and after to help your body to recover and to lower the risk of injury. So super fascinating stuff. We're just getting started. I think it's a perfect entry into the physical AI, robotics, and how it ties to AI.
So how do you go from aerospace and exoskeletons to Bitcoin? What was the path there?
Um, yeah, it's actually kind of a parallel path. If you're asking how I got my orange pill, it started with when I watched Michael Saylor's Q3 2024 earnings call for
Mm.
strategy. Um, I've been following MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor since the late 90s. The first dot-com boom. He was one of I think it's the youngest self-made billionaire back in the day, and he also got the infamous title of since the stock crash in the dot-com bubble, and then he became like the youngest billionaire to lose billions of dollars until SoftBank's Masa took over the title and lost more money than he did in a shorter period of time. So not that Michael Saylor was kind of fighting for that title, but that's kind of how it kind of all happened. Before he's been there for 35 years. So you follow MicroStrategy's evolution, tremendous development evolution, how he persevered throughout. But when I listened to the Q3 2024 earnings call he adopted in 2020 during COVID, and in that call, I think it's about a minute 30 and on, he talked about for 45 minutes about his philosophy, his strategy, his execution, and the track record of both the Bitcoin as an asset class, as well as strategy or micro strategy MSTR TR as a stock, outperforming virtually all asset class over the last 4 or 5 years. So that was um, that was very enlightening. That was kind of a game changer for me. After that, I think I spent a whole week watching every Michael Saylor interview I can get my hands on on YouTube, and really got really entrenched into his thinking, and that was my orange pill moment.
So it's still a big step though from you personally being orange pill to orange pilling your company. What was that process like? Because I think Michael Saylor, my understanding is the cap table of MicroStrategy was kind of unique, and that Michael Saylor personally was able to exerted a lot of influence and control within the company. But is that the situation for you as well? Did you have much pushback from your board or your shareholders? Um, as big of a believer I think as I am, and the viewers of the show are in Bitcoin. I'm not sure how mainstream that view is. So what was that process like?
It was it's definitely a process. So it's a conversation, communication you need to have with the board. You need to have with your stakeholders. So what we did was that we started by I think the first week of I think it was December 4th, we did a survey on X. We took a survey about would you vote for KULR adopting the Bitcoin Treasury strategy? We got thousands of votes on that survey. 2/3 of the people said yes, and 1/3 of people said no. So I think the sample size was large enough, so we knew that was a good sample size. And then after that, we look at the audience that said no. 1/3 of it is probably people who from the comments. There's hundreds of comments. It was a very I think it stirred up a lot of emotion. So 1/3 of the comment, it was very good. We didn't know, we didn't realize it was stirred up that much emotion and that much, that much fanfare. Um, and 1/3 of it was people who just don't like Bitcoin or crypto. So you're never gonna, get anything out of that crowd. So, but that's okay. But the other 2/3, 1/3 was, do you have the financial resource to do this? Number two is, do you have would that be a distraction for your core business? So since then, so that was the first one. And then I had communication with my board. We took a very conservative approach to this. We communicated that we're going to allocate 90% of our surplus cash to start buying Bitcoin. So not all of our cash. And we still have a very good growth business that we're going to invest in. So it's kind of a parallel path. And then so that was a constant communication with the board and listen to the market. But since then we bought I think 4 or 5 different tranches of Bitcoin. We're up to 668 Bitcoins now, and so far so good. So we've demonstrated that it's not a distraction for our core business. We continue to grow and actually expand our business, and we have the financial whereabouts to continue to acquire Bitcoin. So here we are.
So it was the motivation to hedge against inflation, kind of, I think, like MicroStrategy's original motivation was?
Yeah, I think the motivation was when and it was twofold. One is we think it's a much better holder of value, right, against inflation.
Mhm.
And also, subsequently, what we realized is that obviously Bitcoin's a very volatile asset compared to just sticking money into the bank. And so, but this volatility is actually extremely important. Um, so I get asked a lot about, how can you stomach the volatility? And my answer is that Michael Saylor said the best: volatility is vitality. All right. So it is through this volatility. How do you deal with volatility, both from this capital market perspective, as well as from your business perspective? What I meant by that is we're now at the age of AI, where things are advancing so fast. You're going to have your deep seek moment. You're going to have your black swan moment um, all the time. The frequency of that happening, both externally, outside of your control in the business, both from a macro and micro perspective, is kind of out of our control. So I think that for companies like KULR, we need to be used to the external volatility and not just shy away from it, but embrace it and build a culture and an execution cadence to be adapting to volatility at all times. So this is turning out to be a great way for us to kind of live in volatility and deal with it every day. And so when we deal with the volatility in the marketplace, in for the commercial place and the capital market, we're kind of used to it.
Are there any synergies with your core business with things like AI and Bitcoin, potentially becoming like the native currency of the internet? Do you see any synergies there?
I'm a big believer of the Kathy Woods big theme for 2025.
Hmm.
In that big theme, she talked about the convergence of um, energy storage, robotics, AI, um, Bitcoin, blockchain, and human genomics. And we're not in the human genomics business, but the other four we kind of touch upon. And we really see the convergence of that. I mean, how we got to the robotics business to start out with is because we're looking at our battery technology in addition to space and defense. How do we serve the robotics world? So we start talking to German Robotics as a potential customer. Then we realize, wow, this is a really good technology and just really good, physical AI is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar business, no question about it. So how do we participate not just on the battery side, but actually on the full product? So we become a strategic partner for them for the North American market. So this is a tremendous, I think that's where you're going to find synergies, the cross sections between energy storage, robotics, AI, Bitcoin, blockchain, all convergent.
When you say physical AI, what does that term mean? Does that mean like self-driving cars and robotics, drones maybe? Is that
Yeah, the physical AI is the human to machine interface and the machine to physical world interface that is driven by AI. That AI adds more value. So autonomous car driving is probably the most forefront example of that. A lot of machine learning, a lot of visual that's always dealing with the environment. Robotics is another one. But I think that robotics we're still early in that. There's a lot of humanoid kind of development, but I think that for that to fully deploy into a product and to be mass produced or mass adopted, there's still some time. That we think this exoskeleton being a wearable, what you can call a wearable robot, that has a really good machine to human interface, like the example I give you. You wear this device, it would tell you how well or how wrong you're lifting these boxes, and it gives you tips on, hey, are you getting fatigue? Are there better postures? Are there better ways to lift these boxes? That to reduce the lower back injury. And then before and after, teach you ways to stretch and recover, so to make your body feel better. That's a really good example of physical AI, right? And that's getting all the data and feedback to the backend system, getting machine learning AI to do a lot of work and help humans. So I think we're just barely scratching the surface on um, robotics, AI, physical AI, how all that stuff combine to make our life better.
before we started recording, we were chatting, and you said that you went to Michael Saylor's New Year's Eve party, and I've heard you also mentioned that you had an opportunity to spend some time with him. Did he give you any guidance on how to implement this strategy? And what did he share with you?
Yeah, no, after we posted on X, we executed our first Bitcoin buy. Michael reached out to me on X. He was extremely generous, invited me to the New Year's Eve party. I said, great, of course. I'm going to the temple, meet the Godfather, of course, right? So flew into Miami the day before, went to his house and spend a couple of hours with him and telling him the KULR story, get him to know who we are. And he gave me some really good advice on how to think about capital market, how to keep it simple, how to communicate, As actually, probably one of the most important thing is to how to keep the KPI. He used a Bitcoin yield as the KPI. So let's just keep it simple. So that's why we adopted the Bitcoin yield as a KPI as well. So every Bitcoin buy we have a Bitcoin yield just to keep track. And I think now the last quarter, I think Strategy introduced some additional KPIs. They got a real time dashboard to. I mean, they're obviously a lot more advanced. 2 orders of magnitude, 3 orders magnitude more Bitcoin than we have. So we're just getting onto on ramp into this, getting the learning curve, learning how to operate the Bitcoin side of business as well as the operating side of business, how to make the complementary. There's still a lot to learn, but Michael Saylor has been a tremendous mentor and help to me.
How do you define Bitcoin yield?
Excuse me, sorry.
How do you define Bitcoin yield? What is the definition of that metric?
Yeah, there is. I don't want to say it wrong, but there is a very clear definition of that in the. I don't want to get too technical, but in the SEC document that he published, how to calculate that, and it's in our document as well on exactly the formula. It's a very clear formula. Somewhere it's how many bitcoins that you have added compared to how many shares your company shares have issued, and then I mean, I think that's the general idea is that accumulative to the shareholder value. If it's a positive yield, if it's a very positive yield, so far our yield has been a triple digit percentage because we're getting
Mhm.
started. So it's a very accretive um, value to our shareholders.
Got it. Okay, so now that we've got more companies like slowly looking at this strategy and putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet, how do you think investors should evaluate these companies or differentiate them or compare them? Are some of these metrics maybe applicable to that?
Yeah, I won't pretend that I know how to sit on the buy side,
Yeah.
on the buy side as an investor. What KULR, what we're trying to do is number one, follow some of the footsteps as close as we can to the pioneers like Strategy, publish KPI so people understand how accretive our Bitcoin acquisition is to our shareholder value. So people who like to invest in Bitcoin related companies like ours understand the accretive nature of that. Meanwhile, I think that in a separate track, we need to just really tap into this market opportunity that we have in front of us. That's robotics, AI, energy storage. So it just keep on growing the business. At the end of the day, I think that the market is going to be adopting to this. I think the market is going to be smarter than I am in evaluating companies like us. But what our job is to just create shareholder value.
And so, I mean, cash flow is an important part of this concept, right? You can't just buy Bitcoin and issue products to raise money to buy more Bitcoin. You need to have that cash flow, right? So you need to have that core business, which I think was something unique to Strategy when they first started acquiring Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think that Strategy had a tremendous cash pile of, I think, $500 million. And I think Michael Saylor was trying to figure out how to deploy it the best to be accretive to the value of the shareholders, and to resume growth. And Bitcoin became the vehicle for that. And subsequently he put multiple ATMs, including probably the largest, if I remember correctly, it's like the largest ATM or financing infrastructure in the capital markets, like $42 billion or something like that. Just incredible, right? So he certainly knows how to leverage the capital market, and to still be accretive to the shareholders. And then his share price and his capital appreciation is a very clear demonstration of that.
How much do you think the success of this strategy is targeting to investors that haven't traditionally had access to Bitcoin? So, my understanding is a part of this was targeting bond investors who, due to mandate restrictions, they can't buy Bitcoin directly. But this is a way where they can get access to Bitcoin's volatility within their mandate. Is that a big part of the success of this strategy?
Oh, I think it's tremendous. I think Michael Saylor has probably talked about that. That I think I've seen data from his presentation that his bond convertible yield instrument investors um, have higher rate of return than Bitcoin. I mean, obviously, all other convertible bonds. I think even higher yield than or higher return than Bitcoin, and maybe comparable return to his equity investors. So if you're a bond investor that is, you're clipping coupons, but you're getting, triple digit percentage return or close to it, it's a dream come true. So that's really that's really part of success. I think 2023, 2024, he was probably I think he's like the biggest convertible bond issuer in the market in those years. Tens of billions of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how did you guys get the conviction on Bitcoin for a long-term store of value? What was that process like, doing the diligence, and getting that conviction? Because I think like the intuitive thing would be, okay, let's start with 10%, let's start with 20%, but 90% is it's a pretty aggressive move.
Yeah, I think our thinking is that hopefully that's money that you never have to touch. So if that's the case, then you go with a longer time horizon. So the horizon that Bitcoin typically show value is or show positive value is the 4-year window. So within those 4 years, any 4-year window, the Bitcoin's never gone down, and the Bitcoin return on in kind of 4-year time window, I believe is higher than most of other assets. So if you have a longer time horizon and you allocate in our case up to 90% of surplus cash, and this is how you kind of manage your business, then Bitcoin becomes a very attractive candidate for that. And also I think that we are this is after we've adopted, well, actually, when we adopted the election, the US election has already taken place. We know that the incoming administration is, or the then incoming administration is going to be very pro crypto, just by the nature of what the communication and the makeup of the forthcoming cabinet members. And so it presents a less risky bet for us, because I think we're entering to what people call the golden era of crypto in the US. And you have institutional adoption. You got BlackRock, Grayscale, a lot more institutional adoption, and you have sovereign wealth funds, states as well as nations putting more of their reserve currency into that. So that's probably a indication of less volatility to come. So perhaps your window of when the window becomes shortened on positive return and reduced volatility. So all those things kind of play into play into this. And then I think that the last 3 weeks of the market has shown, since our Liberation Day, that the global financial market is extremely volatile. And then, if you pull off some of the data about the correlation or the lack of Bitcoin versus other financial assets, that's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. There was even a period of time when I think U.S. Treasury was experiencing some overnight liquidity issues, whether it's a hedge fund out of Japan or unwinding a carry trade or other factors. But people have to step in to kind of provide more liquidity, and then that kind of shows you, when you have Bitcoin, it's a 24/7 deeply liquid, um, always on market, and there's no centralization, and you can always get access to that. That's the last 3 weeks have shown this is a tremendous asset. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
when people talk about the volatility of Bitcoin, I'm often reminded of when crude oil traded negative, right? So Bitcoin is
yeah,
volatile, but we've never seen Bitcoin go negative yet. So
yeah,
I think that kind of
yeah.
puts to bed some of those concerns.
That was during
Was it
COVID.
always?
Yeah, that was
Yep,
good. That
yep,
was during COVID, right? It didn't mean that they're going to
yep.
pay you to take oil from the tanker, but yeah, I know what you meant. Yeah, that's right.
Um, so was it always Bitcoin for you and for KULR, or did you go through a period of evaluating other cryptocurrencies? Because I think there's still, you see this from the administration too. The words Bitcoin and crypto get used synonymously, and you see it still in the buy side research from Wall Street as well. And they're still having trouble splitting that out. Um, did you guys go through that process as well?
No, it's Bitcoin all the way for us. I don't think there's much other option out there, because this is, look, if you are going to go through this journey, you need to go through the journey with the most stable, and the most credible, with all due respect to everybody else, but the most credible currency, the most liquid, and the one that being adopted the most. So Bitcoin was kind of an easy choice. Mm.
Yeah, I think it's interesting within kind of like California, the Silicon Valley, the West Coast kind of innovation group. I think it's the engineers that seem to get that quite quickly, but it's the guys on the capital side, the VC guys, that seem to struggle with that a little bit. I think their first intuition is that it's very rare in technology for the first iteration of product to be the winner, and I think there's always kind of an instinct to want to iterate on it or improve it or find something that could be an improvement. But I
Yeah,
think it's the engineers that kind of get it more intuitively.
yeah, and one is the technology. The other one is, we're talking about capital, and you need
Yeah.
scale. You need mass. I mean, Saylor said it best. This is digital capital. This is digital energy, right? This is digital energy. The energy needs mass. You can't just have, it needs momentum, it needs mass, it needs all those things. So if you're thinking about capital and financial system, this is the biggest, you know this is the biggest aircraft carrier there is. So you got to be on this.
Yeah. So digging into some of the practicalities, what are some of the details that you guys considered in terms of like your custody setup, how you actually buy the Bitcoin, you do order execution, accounting, reporting? What are some of the key considerations within those very practical items?
Yeah, this is kind of the maturity of the entire ecosystem, right? So, number one, the ecosystem in the U.S. is actually very well established now. We have all of our Bitcoin at the Coinbase, so we have a partnership with them, and they made it. I kind of joke with my CFO. They made it too easy to spend $10 million in a fraction of a second. Just gonna press the button. You can buy it
Yeah.
any time of the day, right? So,
Yeah.
so that was that. And then the entire regulatory body, from accounting to auditing to legal, is now really quite well established. So, from a public company disclosure and financial perspective, that's all very well taken care of. And I think with the new administration, the position with the SEC, it's as crypto friendly and Bitcoin friendly as ever. So all these things are just really positive tailwinds from a regulatory and infrastructure perspective, to help companies like us.
And what would your kind of advice, you said that Michael Saylor gave you some guidance. What would your advice be to other CEOs or CFOs or companies looking to implement this strategy?
I think instead of giving advice, I mean, I think my interest is to share my experience and my thought process, and so people can use that as a reference. So the our journey has been, um, a I would say a transparent one, because I think keeping a transparency is very important, especially for a public traded company. So we took the survey, we got stakeholder feedback, we communicated what we're gonna do, we got good market reaction that we do it, and we each step the way we say we're gonna do it, and then we do it. So I think this consistency, transparency, constant communication with the market is very important, especially for a public traded company. And I think that if you could get the management team, the board, everybody, embrace volatility. This is it's definitely more volatile than a bank account, because and you don't mind, you will not lose sleep on the volatility, which is probably a personal thing for CEOs
Yeah.
and CFOs and board members. And yeah, you should give it a shot.
And how do you see the growth and the adoption of this playing out over maybe the next 6 months or year? Have you had other companies reach out to you and ask for feedback and guidance?
Not so much from other CEOs, and so I think I talk quite a bit to Bitcoin enthusiasts and influencers and channels, like yourself. What I found is that the Bitcoin and the crypto community is extremely friendly. It's a very much a kumbaya kind of a community. Everybody help each
Well,
other out. They are
it is when you're doing stuff that we like. Yeah.
okay. Well, good. All right. So I got to keep on everybody's good side. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
good.
if you adopted Solana or BCH or something, you might have another kind of experience. But
Yeah. Look, I think everybody's really entitled to their opinions,
sure.
their way to spend their money, whatever. But it's just we just kind of, this is our point of view. This is our philosophy, and we communicate to our stakeholders transparently on time. And I think for investors want to be on the journey with us, great. We are, if we're a cup of tea for you, now you're Taipei, which is a cup of tea is good, or a cup of coffee, but it's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's be on the journey together. Yeah.
That's great. And then one last question. What is the end game here? Do you see you build up a stockpile of Bitcoin, maybe in a couple of years you have thousands of Bitcoin. How do you use that Bitcoin, or do you use it?
Um, Frankly, the financial instrument is probably not as advanced as other financial instrument tools. To If you're thinking about leverage and other things, we haven't really thought that far. But right now, I think it's just the appreciation of value, is a really good thing that could increase a lot of value to our shareholders, right? So instead of, like, hopefully this is money we never touch, and so it's increasing value, it's additive to the business, it's increasing shareholder value. So when you look at some of the smarter brains on the street, um, Kathy Wood's got a $1.5 million price target for it by 2030. Michael Saylor's got a market cap target of $20 trillion for Bitcoin. Right now it's about 2 trillion, so it's about 10x. So you're looking at $1 million a coin. So when that happens, then obviously our balance sheet gets stronger. There might be some other ways to leverage that asset to get into other businesses and so forth. So we'll see. But I think we're still really early, and we're just learning along the way to see how everything can tie together. And it's gonna be an interesting journey.
Well, that's great, Michael. I really appreciate the time today. If people want to learn more about KULR on your strategy, where can they go to find more about you?
Sure. Yeah. Our website is KULR, KULR.ai. That's our website. You can find all the latest information, our product information, and so forth. We are quite active on social media, so you can follow us on X. And myself personally, I'm on X quite a bit. Michael Mo KULR. We're also on YouTube. We have, we constantly push out product videos. We think it's a good way to communicate both stakeholders as well as customers, to introduce to our product. And we're also on LinkedIn, TikTok, all the social media channels. So I think in this age of, Web 3.0, blockchain, crypto, AI, you got to be out there. And this is the perfect way to reach all your stakeholders directly, and let them know what you're doing, and take them on the journey with you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, hopefully we can touch base with you again in a couple of quarters and see how things are going.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, please
Yeah,
reach out anytime. I'd be happy to give you and your audience updates.
Great. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
Bitcoin gives you financial freedom if you hold your own keys. Take full control with the new Blockstream Jade Plus, the leading hardware wallet solution for investors.